Do we have too much government?
We need to put people ahead of corporate profits.
This system is so lopsided.
This threat is a real threat to democracy.
And I think that's really important. That's something we haven't been doing in this country for a long time.
Where do you start? What do you do? How do you do it?
Access to Democracy is sponsored by Thomson Reuters, providing legal professionals with the intelligence, technology, and human expertise they need to find trusted answers. Products include Westlaw, Practical Law, and Firm Central legal practice management software for small law firms. Thomson Reuters, the answer company. Online at thomsonreuters.com. Access to Democracy is made possible in part by a donation from Firefly Credit Union. Firefly is the new name of U.S. Federal Credit Union, which has proudly served the financial needs of the Greater Twin Cities community since 1925. At Firefly, we guide our members forward and give them the power to chase dreams by delivering the financial solutions they need to get ahead. From checking accounts to mortgages, we'll light the way. We are Firefly Credit Union, and this is Life Illuminated. And Dr. Charles Crutchfield of award-winning Crutchfield Dermatology in Eagan, acknowledged as one of the nation's best physicians. A Minnesota native who trained at the Mayo Clinic, Dr. Crutchfield personally treats all patients and states that experience counts and quality matters. Crutchfield Dermatology. Look good, feel great, with beautiful skin.
Access to Democracy returns. Yes, it does, and it's the Minnesota Twins division. I'm here with Dave St. Peter and Brian Dozier in the background. Brian won't be saying much, but Dave, I hope, will say much. It's incredible. This is a weekend when the Twins are playing the Yankees, and Dave carves out the time to be here with us on ETV. He's been with us just about every year since he became president in 2002. Yeah. And I can't tell you how much we appreciate it. And the input that we've had from you, it's just been a real pleasure.
Well, Alan, it's an honor to be here. I love what you've done with this program over a great amount of time. And you've been a great service to this community in terms of providing a platform for information to be shared and, frankly, questions to be asked.
Well, we've shared some things such as the Committee to Save the Twins, yep, which is probably how I initially started getting involved, yep, and that goes back a lot of years. And we've been down in Florida at Fort Myers. We've been on the field and done some interviews on the field during batting practice. But through it all, you have always answered our call, and you've never said no. And I appreciate that so much.
Well, you're welcome. I certainly respect the job you're doing and the viewers that you have, which is significant. But I also think it comes with the territory. I think one of the things that was ingrained in me very early on in my Twins career was a responsibility in terms of being accessible. And I think with that, from in a leadership position especially, there's an obligation for us to be here for folks and to try to ensure that the franchise, whether a good year or bad year, middle of the pack year, that you're accessible and you're giving fans and people like you an opportunity to ask questions.
And this year certainly has not been the year that any of us anticipated with the Twins.
Well, that's an understatement. I think
injury-wise and otherwise, it's just things. A third of the season is gone, have not clicked, have not gelled. We've seen a lot of new faces. We've seen some faces that have been around for years, such as Oswaldo Arcia, gone yesterday. That decision was made. And we have to differentiate between, you are the president, so you stand on top of everything. But all the business decisions and the off-field decisions are part of your job as well. So it's pretty monumental, 12-month-a-year job.
It is a big job, but it's also a dream job. You know, it's the job of a lifetime to represent a brand like the Minnesota Twins, a brand where there's that deep emotional connection with a fan base. You know, that's an honor and a privilege, and that's how I approach it every single day. So yeah, I would much prefer to be here with a first place team versus a last place team, but I also understand that when you sign up for these jobs, it isn't just the good years. You have to take some of the bad years, and frankly, that's probably where I earn my keep more so than on the good years, is to try to shepherd our organization through difficult times, try to position ourselves for future success, ensure and also ensure that we keep those people that work within our organization and our fan base, you know, hopeful for the future.
And of course, fan bases shrink when things are going bad,
Yeah.
as opposed to what we saw 3-4 years ago. We got probably the best stadium in Major League Baseball. It offers everything, and yet, well, who anticipates that an all-star closer is going to have an operation on his arm and it is lost for the season? He's played in only 2 games, I think, this year, Perkins. Who anticipates that Jepson, who looked like a great, not only possible closer, but setup man for Perkins last year, is going to be completely flat?
Yeah, you know, Alan, you can't anticipate those things. So I will say that injuries happen to every team. So I don't think we as an organization view that as the story of our struggles this year. It's a factor, but, you know, it's been a collection of challenges and in terms of some underperformance, perhaps some bad luck, maybe some over-evaluation in terms of players that maybe we thought were a little better than maybe they are. And some of it's timing. I remain very bullish on our future. I think that the young core nucleus of players, particularly those that are kind of come from our minor league system, will lead us toward better days. But the first half of the season has been a struggle, and our fans had much higher expectations, as did our owner, as did our front office. So we're going through a period now. We're trying to assess exactly what went wrong with the hopes that we can correct those mistakes. Whether they be mistakes around decision making, whether they be mistakes around evaluation, whether they be mistakes around medical, or frankly, those players, and whether, you know, there's something we can do to ensure better performance going forward out of our collective team.
Well, you mentioned the owners and the Pohlads, who have a tremendous investment in this team, and yet, certainly, according to everything I read, have never shirked about pouring more money into the operation if needed, even to the point where they went to Korea and spent, I don't know, $12 million just to be able to negotiate with a player who's having a tough adjustment to the major leagues. Korea is not the American League. Korea is not Major League Baseball. And Park has had his struggles.
Yeah, you know, Byung-ho, the acquisition that you described is accurate. There was a posting fee. We ended up earning the rights to secure him, and it was a competitive bidding process. A number of teams wanted to bring him into the fold. You know, I think he, over time, is going to be a really impactful major league player. You can see the power. He's just struggling hitting for average and is going to need to make some adjustments, quite frankly, as pitchers have adjusted in the way they pitch him. But longer term, I think he's going to be just fine and is going to be a very valuable piece to the Twins. I'm actually encouraged that he's demonstrated relatively early on in his major league career the authenticity of his power. I think you can just see it when you watch this guy hit. So I expect he's going to hit north of 20 home runs this year, and I think over time those numbers are going to increase, and I think that's a good thing for Twins fans. I do think he's part of the solution longer term.
And Sano is another one.
Yeah,
who,
we got to keep Miguel
now
healthy.
He's injured, and you know, we have to figure out where both of those guys can be in the lineup at the same time, which is one of many problems that Paul Molitor probably didn't anticipate.
Yeah, well, obviously we came out of spring training with very high hopes for Miguel Sano, and you know, he's played some right field, and I think has actually done an admirable job there. Yes, he's made mistakes. We expected him to make mistakes, I don't think that in and of itself is a reason for our struggles as a team. I do think Miguel, his health is our number one concern right now. We need to make sure that we keep him healthy, and longer term, I suspect that factor may have more to do whether he plays in the outfield, ends up over back in the infield at third base, first base, or ultimately a designated hitter. He's a high-impact bat, and frankly, we need more out of him offensively. But he's also a young player that's still cutting his teeth, so to speak, on major league pitching.
Right field is not the easiest field in Target Field.
No, it is not. No, it is not. But he's a good enough athlete, we believe, to play it, and he has improved out there over the course of time. So it remains to be seen what his long-term position will be, but I think we have some flexibility with him, and I think ultimately that outfield experience is going to make him a better player long-term.
In my youth, which goes back to, Abner Doubleday and I, we were buddies, but they would put me in right field because that's where I could do the least damage. I couldn't hit.
Yeah.
So at least put him out there, and maybe he can catch one if it goes that way.
Well, that isn't always the case. There's a lot of gifted right fielders, and in the history of our game, Roberto Clemente comes to mind, and certainly from a Twins perspective, more recently, just Torrey Hunter a year ago played a great right field for us in his last season in the big league. So it's an outfield position where there's an expectation on those corners of offensive production and power. And thus, Miguel Sano being there, I think he profiles certainly as an offensive right fielder, and the defense was the big learning curve for him, and will be going forward.
And you speak of Torrey, who off the field in the clubhouse, was just as important as he was on the field.
Yeah, Torrey is a special human being. He has great character and charisma, and when he came back to Minnesota for the 2015 season, there's no doubt in my mind that he made a huge impact inside of the clubhouse around leadership, accountability, and really was I think a stabilizing force with Ron Gardenhire being gone and Paul Molitor coming in to be the manager. He really became, I think, in some ways another coach. But key to all that was that Torrey backed it up on the field and played at a high level, which I don't think was a given considering his age.
He did, yeah.
So he obviously decided to step away and retire, maybe with the belief that it was going to be hard for him to back it up again on the field quite at that level. And we respect that and understand that. He's going to be...
Torrey, if you're listening or watching.
He's actually in town this weekend. We'll give him a uniform. But we're gonna induct Torrey into the Twins Hall of Fame here in about a month, and very deserved, and really one of the most impactful players to wear a uniform when I consider his body of work, on the field, inside of a clubhouse, and then in the community. He's certainly one of the fan favorites of all time for our franchise.
If he's going to be around on a Friday, I would love to get him down here.
We'll make that request.
I will certainly do that because we will find this time and space to interview Torrey. And some people have had very slow starts this season. In addition to that, you've probably had to bring up fellows who you thought were maybe a year or two away, and suddenly they're in the major leagues. Well, as you said, in the long run, that may be a benefit. But in the short run, subjecting to, as I said to our two new camera people today, what we do here is we throw you off the dock and hope you can swim. Well, you've done the same thing with some of the pitchers and some of the young players that we have.
Yeah, that's a product again of some injuries and some struggles that some of our players had early in the season. Anytime you're going to go with a young player, there's likely going to be a period of adjustment. And I do think there's value in major league at bats for a Byron Buxton, for a Max Kepler, major league innings for whether it be a Pat Dean or to some extent some of our bullpen guys. But there's also been some positive surprises. On the veteran side, Eduardo Nunez has had a tremendous year. The Robbie Grossman acquisition has proved to be a steal when you consider that was a waiver claim.
That's been a real surprise to me.
And he's been, over the last 2 weeks, one of the better hitters in the American League. So, I'm hopeful those are both pieces that we can sustain that success because, I think one or both of those guys certainly will factor into our longer-term plans.
Well, Buxton looks like he has adjusted since you sent him down to
Yeah.
AAA and brought him back. And is he tearing the cover off the ball? No. Is there anybody faster? Not that I know of, in terms of speed, certainly. And he seems to know the game.
Yeah, Byron is doing much better. He certainly has a ways to go, but when we sent him to Rochester, I think the most important thing for him there was to go back, maybe have the slow the game down a little bit and regain a level of confidence. He, technically speaking, went back to more of a leg kick, and I think that's helped him. And I think he's demonstrated since he's come back to the major leagues the ability to take better, more competitive at bats more consistently. So, his talent speaks for itself. It doesn't take long to watch him on a baseball diamond and understand how quickly he can run, what type of an arm he has.
He reminds me of Roadrunner.
Yeah,
Zoom.
and just tremendous reads in center field as a defender that you really can't teach. So in a game now that is largely based on run prevention, I think Byron Buxton is a difference maker and somebody that fans over time will pay to come watch play. And I'm excited for his future.
And perhaps Sano is the next Kirby Puckett.
Well, that's a tough hill to climb.
That is a tough hill
when
to
you
climb.
consider what Kirby accumulated on the field as a Hall of Fame player and one of the greatest clutch players in his generation. But I think Miguel Sano just needs to be Miguel Sano, and he's a different player. He's probably long-term a third baseman. He's a big man. He's a power threat every single time up. But he's also just a very good hitter. He can use the whole field, if he has to. So, we're looking for this guy to build some experience, and his health is absolutely critical for that. And at his size, we got to make sure that we keep his legs underneath him, and the hamstring problems that he's had this year, and of course he had some of those again last year.
Desserts away from him.
Well, you keep him away from me as well. But obviously we want to make sure we watch his weight long term. That's going to be an important part of his development.
And we've talked a lot about the on-field players, and of course, during the years that you've been here with us, Joe Mauer has had his best years, and he's had some of his worst years. And Joe, now in his 30s, is reaching the end of his contract. And, where he's going to go from here, we don't know. But he's also having a better year this year than he had certainly in the last 2 years.
Yeah, that's true. Joe, I think has adjusted finally to the first base position. I think that's been helpful. And as a defender, he's an above-average defender over there, which is an advantage for us. I think offensively, whereas I think a lot of fans still clamor for more power, what they are seeing out of Joe this year are less strikeouts, and certainly he's hitting the ball on the button much more consistently. So he's hitting some tough luck. That happens. And certainly the shifts that are employed against Joe have had a great deal to do with curtailing his batting average.
It's amazing with what technology has done to baseball, and to me somewhat disappointing that teams know every at-bat that a player has had. They have video of it, everything else. You'll see these really ludicrous shifts where there's nobody between first base and the shortstop side of second base for somebody who's like Dozier, a pull hitter, a right-handed pull hitter.
But Alan, it's incumbent upon the hitters to make adjustments.
Absolutely.
The shifts are part of our game, and I'm not one that believes that shifts should be managed or outlawed in any way. I think when teams shift, they leave certain parts of the field exposed, and I think it's incumbent upon hitters to make those adjustments. And over time, I suspect we're going to see...
And not be stubborn about
Yes.
it. Do you hear what we're saying, Brian?
I think over time you will see that. And Brian's a good example. Brian's working hard.
He's a great guy.
Brian's working hard to use the whole field. He really is, if you watch, and certainly watch him during batting practice, what goes on. So, it's not an easy thing to do to hit at the major league level. So I think over time, collectively, players And certainly some managers and hitting coaches are going to teach much more directly to beat the shift and how you do it and take advantage of the shift and use it as a positive, not view it as a negative.
Now, we spent a lot of time talking about the players, which really is more Terry Ryan's job than yours, although all jobs are yours, which for better or for worse.
Yeah, I'm responsible at the end of the day.
But let's talk about the crowds, what you have to do, not on a weekend when you have the Yankees or last weekend when you have the Red Sox, but when other teams come in, maybe even Milwaukee. But how do we keep up the fan interest? You're certainly charged with that responsibility.
Well, and I think we tend to view it as a holistic, experience when you come to a game, and certainly the ballpark experience, the beauty of Target Field, the service that you receive there, the view sheds, the sight lines, the concessions, the parking. If you take light rail, that mode of transportation, all of those things
It's been
factor
great
in.
for us.
And all of our data would suggest that fans still find great value within that. The struggle has been on the field for now 5 of the last 6 seasons, and that is problematic relative to keeping people fully engaged in the product. I do believe that beyond the on-field play, the experience is still stellar. Not to suggest that there aren't things we can find ways to do better, and we have continued to invest mightily inside the ballpark to
I was
continue
just going
to
to bring
evolve
that up.
the facility.
A lot of investment within the park,
Yeah.
within the food, within the physical ballpark itself.
Well, I think it's critical that we continue to keep Target Field operating at a high level and to continue to keep it new and fresh. This is a great time, perhaps the glory days for sports fans in the upper Midwest, when you consider the wonder of the Exo Energy Center, certainly Target Field, all of the facilities at the University of Minnesota, and now this fall, U.S. Bank Stadium coming online, and the renovation of Target Center. So I can't imagine there's another community in the country that will have better facilities than the Minneapolis-St. Paul and the upper Midwest region. So to that end, I think it's absolutely critical that all of those teams, all of those venues, continue to invest mightily to keep their facilities fresh, clean, and very dynamic.
And invest in the personnel who are out on the field.
Goes without saying.
And the
It goes without
Vikings are
saying.
doing it, and the
Yeah,
certainly-
by all means. I mean, some of those leagues have salary caps, so there's a cap system in place. We don't have that. We're going to be much more reliant on our minor league system to distribute good players to the major leagues, and we have to do a better job, plain and simple. I'm disappointed, I'm frustrated, I'm embarrassed with our product right now, and we are where we are. I can't change it overnight, but I will assure you that as we go forward, we will work very diligently to assess every aspect of our business and every decision-making focus, and we'll make changes that are necessary to ensure that we're moving forward towards not only being competitive, but contending for a division and ultimately league and world championship.
And another area the Twins involved in, we just had the Major League Draft. You invested quite a bit of money on an 18-year-old kid from Pittsburgh, Kirillikov.
Yeah, it's close enough. I'm not going to pronounce it. Yeah, high school kid, slugger, really considered by, I think, every team a high draft pick. I think he was probably around the 15th best player in the country. We took the best available player. Profiles long-term, I think, is one of those corner outfielders, maybe a first baseman, but somebody that, he's got a journey ahead of him. It's not going to be quick in terms of a high school kid getting to the major leagues, but we think he has a chance to be a very special player.
Well, we had Joe Mauer, who did it in what, third year, I think?
3.5 years, yeah. Joe made it, and hopefully this gentleman will be on a similar path.
And pitching, which has been a problem this year, obviously Gibson just back last night and pitched 5 beautiful innings, and then the roof fell in. Not terribly. I mean,
our starting pitching has been inconsistent now. There's no doubt about it. No doubt about it. We need to get more out of Irvin Santana. We need to get more out of Kyle Gibson. The Phil Hughes season has been really disappointing, and then I feel badly because he was hurt and injured, and is going
He's
to be out
probably
here
gone
now.
for the season.
Tyler Duffy has been inconsistent. Pat Dean has probably done a better job than most people expected.
And we really haven't talked about Ricky Nolasco, but who has come through in the last couple of games.
He's given us a chance to win most nights, and I give Ricky credit because I know that that he feels as though he has something to prove in this market. So, but overall, our starting pitching has just been inconsistent. It needs to be better if we're gonna win more games, and certainly we understand that better than anybody.
And so, what do you see down the road in terms of Target Field, in terms of the physical aspect of the game?
Well, I think we're going to continue to try to be who we are as an organization, and that's an organization that believes in our minor league system and promoting from within. Moreover, I think it's an organization rooted in community and being accessible. But we ultimately need to make better baseball decisions. We ultimately need to do a better job on developing players and scouting players and ensuring that players are brought to the big leagues, are given every chance for success. And I don't know that there's anything unique about that, but over time, I think that the organization, we have to assess: are there aspects inside of our organization that are preventing us from being successful? And we're trying to evaluate all of those things as we speak. And as we go forward, I'm very bullish because of the number of good young players in our system that we're going to see improvement at the major league level in the near future.
And we can only cross our fingers for the rest of this season.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like it's going to be a playoff season. I think that's a fair
I
statement.
think that
at
is
this
a fair
point.
statement. But I tend to look at it this way. I think the second half of our year could shape up to be very interesting, just because of the potential for a group of young players to play every day out on that diamond. Certainly, that we're going to need to look at our pitching staff as well. But when you think about the Sano's and the Buxtons and the Keplers and potentially a Polanco and a Vilma and maybe an Eddie Rosario. There's a lot of excitement, I know, from our fan base about seeing that young core get their at-bats and, again, maybe get that initial experience out of the way. I think it could be a fun second half to watch a nucleus of young players play every single day at Target Field and around the league.
Well, as I said when we started the show, I really appreciate the fact that you took the time, particularly on what probably is the biggest fan weekend of the year, because we have the Yankees here for 4 games, to come down and share with us, as you have done for at least a dozen years now. And it's greatly appreciated by us.
Well,
I can only wish you and the Twins and the Pohlads, and we haven't had time, and we're not going to have time to talk about the community fund, the tremendous amount of money and spirit they have dumped into the community. A unique family in that regard. So it's really appreciated.
Well, and thank you, and I thank our fans. Our fans have been patient. They're frustrated. Some of them are angry, and I respect that and get it, and we need to do a better job. But I also will assure those fans that we're working harder than ever to make sure we do the right things to give us the best chance to win baseball games as soon as possible, and our fans have been wonderful.
Dave St. Peter, thanks again.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
And we're down.
The timing worked. Right on the money?
2